Welcome back. Joining us today is senior member of the House Financial Service Committee, ranking member of the National Security, International Development, and Monetary Policy, and U.S. Congressman for Kentucky's 6th Congressional District, Congressman Andy Barr. How are you doing, and welcome to the show?
Shakira, good to be with you. I'm doing fine, thank you.
Awesome. There's a few major issues going on in the world today. The first one I want to talk to you about is inflation. Everyone, not just us here in Kentucky, are struggling across the country with inflation. What is your thoughts, and is there a quick solution?
Well, inflation is at the highest level that it's been in 40 years, since 1982. It's about 7%, meaning that Americans' purchasing power is decreasing and their real wages are declining. So that's a real hardship on middle-income Kentuckians. Basically what it means is that the average household in America today is spending $3,500 more for the same goods and services that they were buying over the past several years. And if you think about it, that's like a tax. It's a tax on middle-income working Americans that they simply cannot afford. And the reason why we're seeing a rise in prices, it's a classic supply and demand mismatch. You have overspending in Washington, which means there's excess demand, while at the same time there's regulations and there's policies in Washington that's constraining the supply. So especially when you look at energy prices, why is it cost more to fill up your truck at the pump? It does because we're constraining the supply, but there's over demand. There's excessive demand. That's part of the problem. The other thing is a shortage of semiconductor chips. There's some supply chain challenges out there. So the cost of a new car or a used vehicle now is 37% higher than it was in previous years.
Ouch.
So everything just costs more.
Yeah. Okay, so going to the semiconductors, just for those who don't know what it is, can you explain what do they do and how important are they?
So if you think about consumer electronics, your iPad, your iPhone, or the electronics in your vehicle, all of that requires chips, microchips. And these microchips are produced, the vast majority of microchips are produced overseas. And that's part of the problem. 79% of all these semiconductor chips are manufactured in the Indo-Pacific region, the Asia-Pacific region of the world. We only produce about 12% here domestically in the United States. And 50% of all semiconductor chips are manufactured in Taiwan. And if you think of the geopolitical situation with the Chinese Communist Party threatening to invade Taiwan after the Olympics, this would be a huge problem if you took all of those semiconductor chips offline. That threatens our national security, it threatens our supply chain, it threatens our economic security. And if you think about our local economy, we're so dependent on Toyota up in Georgetown, the 9,000 jobs and all the supply chain jobs related to Toyota. We need more chips.
Right.
So I've supported legislation in the Congress called the CHIPS Act, Creating Helpful Incentives to Produce More Semiconductors Act. And that bill was actually passed in what's called the National Defense Authorization Act. But we need to fund it to build up supply chain resiliency, to build up more domestic production of semiconductors. And we're working on that. I've met with the CEO of the company Intel. They manufacture chips here in the United States, and they just announced a $20 billion investment in a new factory in Ohio to start producing more of these semiconductor chips.
Wow. Do we have a time frame?
Well, you know, with that particular facility, they won't begin starting to produce until 2025. So this supply chain resiliency issue is going to be with us for a while. But with this legislation, we're going to be incentivizing more domestic production.
It's a good start, right?
It is.
Do you have, going back to inflation, do you have an idea when these numbers are going to start looking back where like they used to look, or is this all related?
Well, we need to fix some of the policy, both on the fiscal policy, meaning we need to stop the overspending. Yeah. We need to build up our supply chain, obviously. We need to stop constraining supply with bad policies that, for example, increase the cost of gasoline or increase the cost of energy heating our homes, that kind of thing, especially in the wintertime. So we need to change the fiscal policy. The other thing, though, is that monetary policy plays a role, meaning the policy of the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States. I have oversight over monetary policy, and we need the Federal Reserve to quicken the pace of normalizing monetary policy. For too long, they've been expanding their balance sheet. They've kept interest rates very, very artificially low. We like low interest rates, but it does help fuel this inflation that we're having. We need to normalize monetary policy, and the Fed needs to take into account these fiscal policy mistakes and start unwinding their $9 trillion balance sheet, which is way out of control. So, going back to a normal monetary policy and fixing some of the fiscal policy mistakes, I think will help get inflation under control.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I know people would love to learn more about this. Where can they go to just dig a little deeper into what you just said?
Well, they can go to the website of the Federal Reserve. They can go to the website of my website. There's a lot of links, bar.house.gov, and we can get our constituents more information on this. But the main thing is, for the working families that I represent, they just can't afford the skyrocketing prices, whether it's at the grocery store, at the pump, heating their home in the wintertime. We need to get costs down so that they don't have to experience this inflation tax.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. That's our time. Thank you for coming and stopping by.
Shakira, great to be with you.